Hello everyone, welcome to Priority Zero, a lead dev engineering leadership podcast. I'm your host, Scott Carey, and today I'm joined by Gary Stevens. Gary, thanks so much for coming on. Before we get started, tell us a little bit about who you are and who you work for.
So I'm Director of Engineering at Trainline, which is Europe's most downloaded travel app.
And what do you do there as Director of Engineering?
So I look after two of what we call our strategic themes, customer lifetime value, which is about getting customers onto our app and onto our business, and then engaging them, as well as our global customer journey, which is about building out that transformative product experience.
Right, I'm really excited to kind of dig into how you do that. Before we do, I want to hear a little bit more about how you got to that point in your career. So when did you become interested in software engineering as a career?
So it was during university. I did a very broad technology degree. There was bits of computer science, there were bits of animation, there were bits of networking, and I wasn't really sure what it was I wanted to do, hence the sort of the broad remit. As I kind of went through and learned a little bit more, initially I was drawn to some of the more creative elements, but I found the creative elements in programming and software engineering the bit that really kind of hooked me. After that, I volunteered at a charity, helping them embrace coming online. And following that, I had a few jobs at different agencies, again, sort of following that more creative element. And from there, my career took off.
So when you were more of an individual contributor, were you focused more on the front end side? It sounds like you were on that side.
Yeah, I was very much on the front end side, yeah. And at a time when I think front end was going through a real growth period, when I started, HTML and CSS were the main things that I did. And Flash was still very much on the landscape. And through my career, obviously the decline of Flash sort of gave rise to a lot of front-end frameworks, and had a lot of good opportunity to be in a place where we were trying to replicate a lot of what we'd historically done in a really interactive medium, natively on the web.
And as someone that isn't so much hands-on anymore, I feel like front-end has just changed so dramatically. How would you feel about being a front-end developer today? Do you think it would be so different to what it was like when you got into it?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot more of things that people looked at as traditional software engineering. There's a full application lifecycle to look at. There's different browsers, there's different devices. There's a plethora of frameworks, there's a plethora of paradigms and way of doing things, whether it's consuming all of the content from the back end or whether it's doing something truly interactive. I feel like the area has just kind of ballooned enormously.
Yeah, and it feels like even for people who are hands-on with all of these new frameworks, all of these new paradigms, it's a lot to consume. As someone maybe who's at a higher level of remove now, how do you stay kind of up to date with what's relevant? Because I hear that from a lot of engineering leaders. It can be really challenging to stay up to date, especially in an area that you kind of know, but that's changed a lot since you were there.
Yeah, I try to give myself a bit of a break and not try to know everything. There's obviously areas where I'm more drawn to, that I'm more curious about how they're solving particular problems today. We do a lot of showcases internally where we present a lot of the work we've done. That's a really good opportunity for the curiosity part to take over, ask a couple of questions of how they solve particular problems. But really just kind of skip level meetings, listening to the team, maybe attending a few of their talks and stand-ups, kind of give me that insight of the things that they're trying to do.
Yeah, so for you, clearly it's much more valuable to kind of hear what people are doing inside your four walls. You're less focused on what's going on elsewhere. Is that fair?
Yeah, I want to know where they've got problems and where I've got an opportunity to either provide support, resources, lean in with advice, or connect them to the people that can help solve their problems. There's still the time outside of work where I'll maybe tinker on the number of unfinished side projects that litter my desktop. But usually kind of the areas I tend for in the office are to try and understand where can I help these people be more effective.
Yeah, I was doing some leadership training recently, and someone made me become aware of the idea of the advice monster. I don't know if you've come across this concept, but I think for someone at your level, it's such an interesting thing to understand whether it's something you're kind of consciously aware of, and if you have any ways of kind of taming that advice monster. And for anyone that doesn't know, it's very much what it says on the tin. Yeah. It's just that voice in the back of your head that isn't helping someone solve the problem themselves. It's that temptation to be like, this is how I would solve it.
Yeah, I consciously try to think about my impact. Right? Impact in leadership is a big word, but I'm aware that to a junior engineer or a mid-level engineer, advice I give may carry weight, positively or negatively, in how they receive it. So if I'm approached with a problem, I kind of go into that active listening mode, try to understand what the the challenge is, try to understand it in a little bit more detail, and then I maybe try to play it back to them. If I've understood you, I think the problem you're suffering from is this. One of the great bits of advice I was given by a coach a few years ago was to then immediately start with, and what do you need from me? And those words, I think, have been really powerful in immediately making the conversation one of, like, are you looking for advice, or are you looking for some support and to offload? And if people are kind of then open the door and say, I need some advice on what to do next, that's my gateway into kind of offering that without starting with here's what you should do.
It's actually really good to take that into your personal life as well, I found, because like it's even more tempting because the stakes sometimes feel a bit lower to kind of skip that step in personal interactions. So I've become much more aware of that. So that's been your path so far. So you're now director at Trainline. At what point in your career did you decide you wanted to move off of that IC track and onto the management track?
I started leading a team probably 2013, small team of a few engineers. And at that point, I sort of shifted in how I operated. I saw it much more about enabling them to do good work and helping them solve problems that were coming rather than solving the problems they had and giving them space to do that. Through a number of projects, I had to do more of that. And I found myself slowly kind of getting away from the work, but some of that consciously. I got as much enjoyment out of supporting engineers and helping them develop to solve problems as I did doing the work myself. You know, I enjoy the outcome. I don't need to be right there in doing the hands-on work.
I think that's a massive realization. I think the moment you realize that is the moment you're hooked, and the moment you realize that it's probably all is going to be that track for you now. And I feel like people who kind of go the other way, that's the moment where they realize they find that too difficult or they don't get that same level of gratification. I don't think it's so much about the challenge of the job of management. I think it's that gratification piece. I think you can learn the other stuff.
Yeah, I think so. I think as long as you've got a really interest in developing or leading people, that's what, as you say, that's what hooks you in. That's the bit that kind of gets you into the role, and that's where you can get some real satisfaction on a daily basis. The rest of it is all about the experiences, all about the challenges you face and the scenarios that you're dropped into, and over time building the toolkit of things of how you would approach a problem.
Yeah, and so like once you realize that was the kind of path you wanted to go down, it seems like most people kind of get shunted into that, and then you kind of like figure it out as you go along. You don't get time to step away like a football manager does, and they take a year between jobs. Where did you turn to when you realized that was where you were going next in terms of kind of figuring out some of those more like people challenges or some of those management things that you hadn't learned in university or on the job?
I had a really great manager. Prior to Trainline, I was at Compare the Market, the price website, and I had a really great manager there, a guy called Nick, who had been a coach, and so he brought a lot of his coaching experience into how he managed. And I had transparency and openness with him, and I could say to him, look, I'm not really sure how to do this bit. I feel a bit out of my depth. He was great at playing back real life examples of how you'd done something and say, what you're forgetting is the time you did this, or the safety net you've got here, or what is it you're trying to go for, and through those interactions, it just over time helped build that confidence. He was kind of there. He was there to kind of catch you, even though he would consciously say he wasn't. Right, you felt that strong line manager was there to support you, and I think that and a few techniques and strategies that he kind of gave me for managing uncertainty were really, really powerful.
Yeah, I had a great manager once who I'm really bad at numbers and Excel. So like as I moved up the management track, that became something that I had to figure out because there's just so many spreadsheets in your life. And I'm still not great at it, but I remember I was sat there looking at like a P&L sheet and I was like, I don't know what to do here. And when I told him, he was like, okay, like, do you want to get good at Excel or do you want to get good at doing a P&L? And I was like, doing a P&L. And he's like, great, I'm going to give you like the basics of this and like you can try and figure it out. And then if you get stuck, you can come to me. That was so useful. And I've actually said that to loads of people when they come to me with a slightly more technical problem. It's like, do you want to get really good at this technical thing or do you just want to solve the problem?
Yeah.
And then we can have that conversation.
I think that's a really great bit of advice because we can so often be blinded by the challenge of knowing what we want the outcome to be, an unfamiliar situation. And it can be tempting to try and solve both at the same time. And sometimes you do need to think, this will give me a use case for how I want to solve that technical problem in the future, but now I'm focused on the outcome.
Yeah. And so you had that great manager. Is there anything that you took away from them now that you manage teams and now that you're kind of trying to coach people? Because I think we bandy the word coaching around a lot, but having recently kind of like tried to get better at it, it's really, really challenging.
Yeah.
Is there anything you learned from that good manager or any other good managers that you now are really conscious about when you run your teams?
I'm much more conscious. I completely agree. We say coaching and mentoring interchangeably, right? We use it in the same context. And one thing Trainline's been really good is kind of investing in people in some of those coaching sessions. And patience is the huge virtue in coaching. You're not trying to give the answer, you're trying to lead someone to the answer. And I try to be very deliberate. So I do a lot of mentoring internally, and I try to move out of the coaching in the mentoring sessions where I ask, what's a problem you're having and what have you tried and how do I help point you in the right direction? So it's more just being, I think, really deliberate about when those two skills are used and recognizing, I think, the situation I'm in. And knowing, am I using the right tool for the job ahead of me?
And how long have you been a director now?
So I was director at Compare the Market for 2 years, and I've been at Trainline 2 years.
And so what was the biggest kind of like shift for you going from whatever level you were before director to director?
Definitely being comfortable getting out of the detail. A piece of advice I was giving early on was put down the pickaxe, right? The depth of information you have in an area about what's happening in the team doesn't mean that you're leading it in the right way. It just means you know what's happening. Learning to lead through others and learning to give them the space to try things and fail themselves. Those were very uncomfortable things to do straight away because you feel if you're allowing the team to fail that somehow you're letting them down. But in reality, you're allowing them to learn the value of experience and giving them the autonomy to do the thing they need to do rather than depower them and step in and take over. And it can be difficult, right? If you don't immediately know the answer to a question that you're asked, because you're not in that detail, it's okay to sort of say to somebody, I'll check in with the team and I'll follow up on that. I think that's been something I try to do more and more.
And so 4 years at the director level, I feel like that's typically the time when people start to get a bit itchy. But I find that the next step after director is a really interesting one. Where are you thinking of going next?
I try to remain really open-minded about what I want my career to be. I've found that in the past when I've been closed to focusing on a particular area, it may blind the direction I take. If I only focus on what I identify as the next role, I don't want to take a route that doesn't actually give me the fulfillment of what I like to do. So right now what I'm trying to do is think about what I know my obvious development areas are, where I need to get some outside experience, an outside perspective, some feedback, some look back at what I think I'm doing well, at what I think I need to do better, and try and build the plan around that. And where I am at the minute, I think I've got ample opportunity to grow in that and take on new challenges and develop a part of things that I've not really been exposed to before.
Perfect. Right. We're going to take a quick break there, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about Gary's Priority Zero. So Gary, this podcast is called Priority Zero. We talk about the biggest priority on your list right now. What's your biggest priority at Trainline right now?
My biggest priority is probably the word engagement. And I'm using engagement as a very broad kind of catch-all for a lot of things that I'm trying to do. For me, it's about making sure that the engineers that work in the part of the business I'm responsible for feel that they know what their work is contributing to. And with that kind of opens up a whole new set of challenges. So providing visibility and clarity of goals, ensuring that they have attachment and see the value in those goals, that they feel they're able to contribute to them effectively and that their work matters. And for me, that's the little bit of the recipe for success. The more we kind of do around giving people that sense of connection and engagement to their work, the more we can do celebration moments about things that go well, the more we can provide feedback or development areas on things that they're struggling with. So really trying to build that strong connection and problem solving around what good goals are like and what good focus looks like in those goals. That's where I'm spending a lot of my time.
Yeah, and you're a consumer-facing app with a huge amount of users, and I feel like you could use engagement in this sense with a dual meaning, because I feel like you're talking about the engagement that your engineers have with their work, but I feel like that's probably driven by the engagement levels that you're seeing from your users as well. Is that the kind of feedback loop that you're trying to build?
Absolutely. So, we're a consumer-facing business. The engagement and feedback of our customers is important. We're really customer-centric, and ultimately, we're here to build a transformative experience for customers, giving them the tools in our app or on our website to plan journeys that matter, to make the right savings, to choose the right thing that matters to them. Yeah, the engagement, the feedback we get from them is just as important, and we want that to be the catalyst for people kind of finding the exciting things to go after.
Yeah, and we've talked a little bit about impact, and I'm always interested by how people start to measure impact. Like with Trainline in particular, you said your biggest priority is engagement. How do you start to measure that impact and then, create those celebration moments for your team?
I think if everybody is clear on what the team goal is, and if they can answer themselves, do we feel that this goal has impact, either for our customers, for our consumers, for the partners that we work with, then that helps them answer that question. The next layer down, I think, is for the engineers themselves of, is the thing I'm contributing to this substantial and meaningful? Is my individual role in this adding and creating impact? It's something we ask through the promotion process that we've rolled out. We ask people to focus on their individual contribution. We don't want to build a team of solo heroes, right? We want teams to be harmonious and contribute together. But when we're looking at promoting individuals, we want to know where was your direct impact in this work? Where did you solve a problem that the team were facing? Where did you uncover a particular gnarly challenge that you solved?
And I hear from a lot of leaders it's very difficult, especially in teams that may be a little bit more remote, to actually create those celebration moments. Have you got any ways that you found that kind of deliver on that?
Yeah, we talked about impact earlier, and when your words matter. And I think sometimes I can be thinking that if I give a team a shout out, like, does it feel genuine and authentic? Is it just me celebrating the team? But it does matter, right? People do know that if somebody external to the team is noticing and appreciating their work, that they feel valued and they feel their work is being noticed. So when I see particular good bits of work, or when I hear about team members or direct reports of my teams that are doing really well, trying to give those call out moments. The big one that we've done this year is a bi-weekly showcase. There's no format. There's a drop in, everybody kind of comes in, and then there's just a couple of minutes on either the A/B test they're running, the technical challenge they solved, the great bit of research that our research team have done, or a great bit of insight that our data team has spotted. And that's really organically grown into something that has been, a few people find like the highlight of that fortnight, where they get to see exposure to things that other teams are doing, they get to see cool things that are coming, and they just get a sense of celebrating each other's work. So it's led by the engineers, it's the whole content is facilitated, individual contributors are presenting the work, not managers, and it's become a really organic celebration point.
And do you find with that format, like I love that format, but do you find that you kind of get the same contributors over and over again? And are you conscious that you're trying to kind of use it as a showcase for people who maybe don't feel like they're delivering that impact and don't feel as confident about putting their hand up, but you know that they are, they just don't have that confidence? It's
the bit I've been most pleasantly surprised about, is that the breadth and variety of presenters has been really broad.
Yeah.
I've got to give the line managers a huge amount of credit in creating that support to allow their engineers to do that. We have teams in London and in Barcelona, and we have presenters from everywhere, right? Like, we have some presenters who are remote that week or that day and decide to present their idea remotely. And the engagement has just been consistent, whether someone's in person or not in person, or whatever role they've been at. It's been really great and rewarding to see.
Nice. And I'm going to go back to what you were talking about when it's talking about kind of engagement and measuring it. And you mentioned like having clear goals. You've said that a couple of times, really important. Like with how you kind of start to measure that, are you a believer in having kind of one goal that you can like shoot towards, or is that just an impossible thing to actually do?
So we run on OKRs really heavily, and we try to have a nice, big, succinct hero metric.
Yeah.
The one thing that the team conceptually can just focus on. Within that, they can have different KRs that maybe have different types of metrics, as long as they're confident that they can prove those things and they ladder up to that hero metric. In the past, we've had teams who've kind of picked one or two different metrics. And while that's great, because they maybe are trying to prove different things, creating that central focus and commitment around moving that one big thing in a meaningful way tends to add a bit of cognitive overload. So It may not always be the right thing. We'll iterate that and we'll learn. It may not always be getting the KRs right, but trying to simplify. At the end of this quarter, we're going to say we moved the needle on this. That's the mindset that we try to embed.
And are those things like spend per user, time on app, things like that?
Easing conversion rate, so simplifying the speed that customers get through, the number of searches they have to do. We tend to focus more on kind of behavioral things that make the user's experience of the app that bit better.
And one thing I always am interested in with talking to people at your level about metrics is this idea of kind of safety latches because I think if you have one measure, it can be very tempting for teams to kind of gun towards it and ignore any peripheral damage that metric can have. Like, is that something that you think about?
Yeah, we'll talk a lot about boundary metrics or metrics that are leading indicators. We have a really talented data science team that partner really effectively with engineering and product counterparts, and they can have that conversation around, is this the right indicator for this behavior? Do we have the data that led us to form the hypothesis that said that metric leads to this behavior? And breeding that confidence in those things and facilitating those conversations and creating that clarity has been really great at making sure we're picking the things that do matter. And if we don't, then we can kind of do a bit of a retro on that, figure out why, what was the hypothesis that we got wrong, what was the data point that we didn't notice.
You mentioned data science, obviously machine learning, big topic right now. I think with an application like yours where you're trying to make really smart recommendations, you're really trying to help people through that kind of journey. How much work are you doing? How much time are you spending thinking about the elements of machine learning in the application? And then obviously the step change we've seen with Gen AI and trying to bring that in as well.
Yeah, I think we obviously pay a huge amount of attention to all of it. There's a lot of work we're putting into building out more of our ML capability, looking at where does Gen AI start to cross over with travel planning or information that supports or gives context around these things.
And does it? Because it's recommendation engines, obvious. Gen AI, slightly less obvious.
I think if you take someone like Google, who are already displaying train times directly in search, hotels, flights directly in search. I think if you imagine a world where multimodal journey planning is where people want to get to, where they can say, I've got a hotel here, I've got a hotel in Edinburgh, what's the quickest way for me to get there? That's when I think things will start to kind of come in and disrupt and intermediate and provide that overview, and how we play a valuable role in that by using our content and our experiences where we have a wealth of knowledge and are experts in this area, how we can really contribute to that or create an experience that matters is, I think, a direction that we may see emerge.
And at your level, how challenging is it to kind of bring in those machine learning elements while still thinking about safety, thinking about how you bring those teams together? Like, what are your biggest challenges with that side of things?
I think customer trust has to remain vital, right? And I think we have to show customers how we got to an answer, how we landed on an insight. And I think customers want to know that, right? I think users across digital landscapes we're not naive anymore. We know a little bit more about how the sausage gets made. We know a little bit more about how our data is used and collected. I think we have to be more transparent with providing answers on that so that customers trust that we're making the right decision or the right recommendation, especially in an area where they may be spending 60, 80, 100 pounds on a train ticket, and it's a big outlay for someone. Knowing that it wasn't just a machine that recommended something arbitrarily, that it was the right call, I think is vital.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting when I asked you what your priority zero is, you talked about something that's very team oriented, and I'm interested, is that how you think about your role now at the director level? Is it much more about kind of bringing that culture of engagement up through the layers?
I think so. I want engineers in the areas of the business that I work in to feel pride and attachment to the work that they do, and know that what they're adding is contributing positively, is developing their career in the right way, and that they've got support structure around them. Now, I tend to do that through the people that I lead rather than directly. And so I have to provide them with that context. And so it's consciously thinking about what's the tools and the information that I need to give to my team so that they can effectively lead their teams and allow them to manage and work with their teams in a different way. But providing that North Star, providing that feedback and providing that direction and context also out to the business as well as internally to the team is where I see my role.
And what's the biggest blocker for that priority at the moment?
I think time. I think it's really tempting to want, you can't expect overnight change when you're driving cultural change. I would love to do that. And there's this part where you see a problem, or so we do a lot of engagement surveys, you see a particular negative piece of feedback, and you know that solving that problem only comes with proving what it is that you do and letting somebody else feel that change has been made. It's not like code, I can't release something, it's fixed and it's live. It takes time. And I think the breadth of things that you kind of want to move and engagement you want to create, time is always the biggest blocker.
And I want to look into the future a little bit here in terms of like when, I think that priority is super interesting because it feels like a very long-term priority. Like at what point would you be happy that is no longer priority zero and you can move on to the next one?
I would say I'm never going to be done because it's a continual investment and continual process. I recently read a quote that utopia is described as the process of improvement, not the end destination. And that's what I will see. There'll be how much time is needed and how self-sustaining it is will be the true success of whether it's working effectively. When it becomes something where I feel that everybody is positively contributing to the things that they want to drive, then I'll feel that we've created an environment that's self-sustaining, but we'll always pay attention to it.
And what are you really excited about in your domain at the moment? I think, we touched upon the opportunities around data science, around machine learning, but in terms of kind of booking travel experiences, what kind of keeps you going there in terms of the next big challenge or the next big opportunity?
I think rail is a really interesting point where people are starting to understand it is a more sustainable and more effective transport mechanism versus plane.
Yeah.
I've had the opportunity and the privilege to travel. We recently traveled from London to Milan and then on to Rome on the train.
Yeah, you try and do a lot of rail travel, don't you?
Well, we try to really dog food and live the brand value. And doing that 17-hour train journey through Europe, whilst at a huge investment of time, was so great at having breakfast in London and lunch in Paris and then going into snow in Geneva and then shorts and t-shirt in Rome was really fun and really great. And it has such a massive benefit to the environment to travel that way. And I think as more people start to realize that shift is a worthwhile one and time spent on trains is an enjoyable time versus time spent on a plane, they're going to look for ways to take better trips, to find cheaper prices, to take more comfortable journeys. And so a big thing is like, how do we create those? How do we capture that momentum? And how do we create those experiences our app works just as well for the people booking their on-the-day commute as it does people planning that big holiday?
Yeah, in theory, you can get a lot more work done as well on the train. But
yeah, a ton of more work done. It's great.
I remember when I was traveling around Europe as a 20-year-old, and that was before a lot of these options existed. And yeah, trying to navigate the different operators across Europe was a full-time job. So being able to take that out of the equation it really opens it up. It makes Europe more of a continent, less than a bunch of connected countries.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a huge concern point for customers and a huge anxiety moment in Spain and Italy, there's complete aggregation across routes. There's a lot of companies operating on multiple routes and with different class of trains and different carriages and different types of journeys. So knowing what's best for either your price point, your time, or your comfort can be a little bit daunting, and that's why we try to make it easy.
Perfect. And I like to finish every show with a recommendation. This can be anything. It can be work-related, not work-related, something you've read, something you've seen. What would you recommend? I'm
a big listener to the Hard Fork podcast. That there's a weekly snippet and dive into the industry at large. And what I really love about that is the nuanced way that they kind of dive into a particular topic and talk about it and its real world impact. That's been a really great one at just getting me to think a little bit differently about the problems I'm facing and how the challenges out in the industry at large and Gen AI and other things that are becoming more prominent, privacy concerns, safety concerns, information consumption has been really great for just kind of keeping me, I think, abreast and informed.
Yeah, those guys are great. They do a really good job. Gary, thank you so much for coming on today, especially on one leg. We didn't even got onto your injury, but really appreciate the time and hopefully see you again soon. Thank you again for listening to Priority Zero, a Lead Dev podcast. Remember, you can get us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, but when you do, please remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and we hope to see you at the next one.